What are some of the other challenges that organizations and leaders face when it comes to getting groups to brainstorm effectively? And how can improv help with that?
There are many challenges that organizations face when trying to get people to collaborate or brainstorm, share ideas, ideate, however you want to frame it. The challenges are universal and they come from a lot of different biases. One, for example, could be status quo bias. If it's not broke, why break it? Why are we doing this thing? We're very successful already, ignoring trends or global competition, technology changing. It is what it is. Let's just keep it as. Ego bias. An ego bias can come across in a lot of different ways. One of which is you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, you're looking good. And others look at you like, oh, you gained some weight. Like, no, the mirror. So we look at things uniquely. Another version of ego bias, though, is based in arrogance. That I'm smart, I'm super smart, so I already know what the answer is to this thing. Why do I have to collaborate with you? You're not nearly as smart as I am. So how do we temper that one as well? And so you start looking at all the things that keep people from collaborating with each other, and you put it front and center and say, this is what we own. Have the group talk about it. What's keeping us from collaborating? Have them have ownership of defining this. And then in doing so, you can back up then and say, this is a way that we're going to take all these different biases and all of the different barriers that keep us collaborating, and we're going to remove them. And it's important to put time limits on this. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, if we're always going to do this, how are we going to come up with an answer? Well, we're not always going to do this. We're going to do this for a specific period of time. It could be as an exercise, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If it's a real problem, it could be 30 minutes, an hour that you're going to diverge. Go back to the framing of divergent versus convergent thinking. Old model, 1960s, I think it was J.P. Guilford created this model. We're repurposing it now to really show how improvisation can take hold and be effective inside of a group. We are going to diverge for 15 minutes. Let's make a mess, come early, often, number of ideas. Really, how many ideas can we come up with in 15 minutes? Can we come up with 150 ideas in 15 minutes? Let's do it. Let's punch this out. And then once that bell goes off, that timer goes off, now we're going to deliberately move over into the critical thinking side, the judgment side. We're going to separate the ideas, let the good ideas rise, the Darwinism of ideas. The best ideas are going to survive. The worst ideas, they're not going to make it, so fine. So let's focus on those best ideas until we finally come up to that productive outcome on the tail end. So it's acknowledging in any team there's going to be biases, there's going to be barriers that people have to face, and we still have to succeed. So let's use the tenets of improvisation as a way to remove those barriers so that we can be effective in these meetings. Because ultimately as well, we're talking about cutting redundancy. And my, for example, would be, have you ever had to have a meeting because you didn't cover what you were supposed to cover in that first meeting? Or a second meeting to cover what you were going to cover in that first meeting, which was really what you're going to cover in the original meeting, or a third, fourth, and you start going out. Well, cut it. And it's about being explicit with intent as a leader, framing it properly, holding people accountable as well, because the tendency is to slip into old habits. And if your old habit is to go to a preference of judging rather than generating ideas and crossing your arms, then you have to break people of that habit. And sometimes the way to break people of that habit is to remove them. I'm all for grassroots efforts. They're real. Grass won't grow when somebody's standing on it. So as leaders, we really have to check where we're standing.